This is Focus on Your Health. It's brought to you by Kingman Regional Medical Center in historic Kingman, Arizona. I'm TG LaFredo, and this week my guest is Patricia Jacques. She's with the Arizona Youth Partnership. Hey Patricia, welcome.
Hi, how are you today?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. You are a community development coordinator with Arizona Youth Partnership, and it's all about trying to keep young people off of drugs.
Basically what we're doing is we're trying to educate them to prevent them from ever starting. Mm-hmm. We know that once they start, they're going to fight a really difficult fight to, if they become addicted, that it's hard to battle that. Right. It's a lifelong disease that's preventable. Right. We can prevent it, and so that's what we're doing. We're out here trying to prevent it.
I came to the hospital last week and saw you give a presentation called RX360, mm-hmm. and it focuses on the abuse of prescription medication.
Yes.
I felt like I knew a little something about that, and when I was there at the presentation, I realized I didn't know much of anything about it. There were a lot of facts and figures that really I found staggering, and
exactly.
It's a real problem here in Mojave County.
Yes, it is. Right now in Mojave, I'm also part of a coalition, the Mojave Substance Abuse Team.
Right.
We came together at the end of 2013 mm-hmm. to address the prescription drug abuse issues that we were having. At that point in time, we had the second highest death rate in the state for opiate overdose deaths.
Right. And I should say, if your voice sounds familiar to regular listeners, you were on briefly with us. It was a show we did last summer talking about substance abuse.
Yes.
And we talked with Jamie Valdivia, who's mm-hmm. a young woman who had lost her sister, who was just, I think, 24
yes.
years old.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, from that experience, I realized, well, we have a lot to talk about. And so here we are. We're talking about that. And we've talked a bit about the MSAT, the Mojave County Substance Abuse Team, mm-hmm. right?
Yes.
Go ahead. I interrupted you.
So in the fall of 2013, we were approached by members of the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission to become a pilot county in addressing the prescription drugs. We were called the Mojave County Prescription Drug Initiative. When we first began, we had a 13% compliance rate with the prescription drug monitoring database system.
What does that mean?
Okay, so that means that only 13% of our prescribers were utilizing the state-run database for narcotic drugs. Mm. So when you're talking about addiction issues and people that are abusing prescription-only drugs, you need to look at two things, accessibility and availability. If our prescribers are not utilizing this database system, then there's a good possibility they're being overprescribed. And what we're looking at is we were looking at enough prescription pain medications being prescribed in our county to medicate every single adult within the county for 30 days straight. That's a lot of pain medication.
Okay, so the database was set up because, for example, someone could go to physician A, get a month's worth of prescription mm-hmm. meds, go to physician B that same day.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Okay,
so the database system was set up through the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission, the Board of Pharmacy, and the Medical Association. Mm-hmm. So at 13.9%, we know that there's not a lot of prescribers that are using it. There was only one permanent prescription drug disposal site within the county at that point in time, and that was in Lake Havasu City. Mm-hmm. 2 years later, mm-hmm. we're at over 40% compliance with the database system. We have 7 permanent disposal sites countywide now. So you can go in Kingman, you can go to the Kingman Police Department and drop them off. You can go to Mojave County Sheriff's Office in Kingman and drop them off. You can go to the Bullhead City PD, Lake Havasu PD, Peach Springs PD, and then there's another one up on the reservation up in the Peach Springs area. So and then we've got one pending for Mojave Valley.
And this is important because it may be obvious, but you shouldn't just flush your unused prescription meds.
No, please do not flush your prescription meds because, and forgive me, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a biologist, I don't understand the mechanics of how it goes from the wastewater into our water table, but it does. Right. we don't want to find these medications in our water. So please don't flush them. Go to your local police department. You can dispose of them. It's free.
It's 24 hours, I assume. It's anonymous.
The Bullhead City is not 24 hours. You need to walk into their police department to do theirs.
Right.
I know Lake Havasu City is 24 hours. You can walk. You don't have to sign anything. You don't fill anything out.
Right.
You take your prescription medications out of the bottle, drop them into the disposal site, and you're done.
So you have made significant progress in
Yes.
2 years' time.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, there's still a lot of work to be done.
There is a lot of work to be done because 40%, even though it's a wonderful number, is not enough. 7 disposal sites is not enough. We still need to educate our youth, our parents, our community members as to just how horrific these accidental deaths can be. It's really important that people understand that when you're abusing a prescription pain medication that's opiate-based, such as OxyContin or hydrocodone, it has the same chemical makeup as using heroin. The same chemical makeup as heroin. So a lot of times what can happen is if you have someone that has a prescription and they're not aware of the addictive capabilities of the opiate medication, pretty soon the prescription is gone and they're addicted. It's not bad people, it's sick people, and once you have that addiction, it's not a matter of using the drugs to get high, it's a matter of using the drugs to be normal.
So when I was at your presentation the other day, you showed a short film, and there was something really striking in there. It was about, they were mainly young people, and they were using these prescription meds. Several of them had lost their lives to that. A couple of them survived. Mm-hmm. One, not so much, just barely survived. There was a father who had lost his son to an overdose of prescription medication. And the father said something that really stuck out to me, and I actually wrote it down. And he said, I'm not sure if he even thought he was doing drugs. And we've talked about this before on the program. But there's kind of this idea, drugs, they come from the streets and they're cut with anything and they're filthy and they're, shady characters. Mm-hmm. However, prescription meds, they have to be safe, right? Because they come from the pharmacy and it's all sterile and it's, right?
No.
But they're still opiates.
They still have the same basic chemical makeup. Right. And that's what we're trying to help people to understand, that a lot of times people's perception of what an addict looks like mm-hmm. is very far from the truth. I know grandmothers and grandfathers that had to go into a program of recovery and detox because of their addiction to prescription pain medications.
Right.
So what you think an addict looks like is not necessarily the case. It could be the person next door.
You have lots of numbers and statistics, and sometimes they can become overwhelming. Mm-hmm. Something that really struck me was you had 44 orange pill bottles out on the table.
The latest numbers from the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, are 44 people every day die from prescription drug overdose. Okay, 44 people. The bottles that you're speaking of are now on display. If you'd like to see that display, because they are people's lives, they have photographs in them. Mm-hmm. They have letters from loved ones. This was all part of our 420 event that we held under the London Bridge this year when we had the National Prescription Drug Traveling Memorial Wall come to see us. Mm-hmm. It was a beautiful event in which we paid tribute, because nobody gets up in the morning and says, gee, I want to be an addict when I grow up. Right. Or, gee, I've worked so hard with my education and my career, I think I'm going to become a felon today. Right. It doesn't happen that way. It sneaks up on you before you've realized what has happened. So again, that's my job, to educate people so that it doesn't sneak up on them, so that they have an opportunity. And the windows, the shops at the mall in Lake Havasu City has donated window space to our organization, in which I go out and I do different things for each month. And this month we're doing back to school safety. So there's a campaign on alcohol. Are you locking your alcohol? When our children are little, it's kind of a no-brainer. We all know to move our cleaning supplies from the lower shelves to keep them up where they can't get a hold of them. And just because they go into middle school or high school doesn't mean that we can lose that due diligence. We need to keep our alcohol locked. We need to monitor it to make sure that our youth aren't getting into it, because a lot of this starts with alcohol. And then the prescription drugs. Are we keeping our prescription drugs locked? Are we monitoring how many pills are in each bottle? And paying attention. These are things that we need to do. So, again, if you would like to see the bottles, it's a pretty powerful statement when you walk up on a mall window and it says 44 people die every day due to prescription drug overdose.
Time for a quick break. We'll be back in a moment for more with Patty Jacques from the Arizona Youth Partnership. This is Focus on Your Health. And welcome back to Focus on Your Health. I'm TG LaFredo, and this week my guest is Patty Jacques from the Arizona Youth Partnership.
I know you are always out in the community, and so you also are doing surveys, and you want to see what the information is filtering into young people, right? And you said that 69% of kids in Mojave County say their parents have never spoken to them about drugs.
Correct.
Never said anything about it.
Never said anything about it. And this comes from the Arizona Youth Survey, which is implemented by the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission. This survey is given to 8th, 10th, and 12th graders every other year. So on all of the even years, our youth are being surveyed. And then on the odd years, those are the years like this that we will see us out beating the streets and talking to whoever will listen to us.
Anybody with a microphone.
Right. Anybody who will listen to us and anybody who we can get on board and giving them a survey.
All right. First question. At what age should you begin talking with your kids about these things?
It's never too early to start talking to your kids, and we need to talk to our youth early, and we need to talk to them often. Some of the things that, and there's always teachable moments that are given to us via the media.
Right. So I wanted to say, well, how do you broach that conversation?
Okay, depending on what it is and the age of the child, you want to try to stay as age appropriate as possible. For a younger child, it can be something as simple as the Super Bowl.
Do tell.
Okay, and I'm going to share this. The Super Bowl, because during the Super Bowl, and I can't mention the name of the company, however, we've all seen the commercial where there's this man and he lives on a beautiful horse ranch someplace in Kentucky, and it's gorgeous, and he has this dog and a puppy, and pretty soon the puppy gets away from him. But and the horse breaks out of his stall to find the puppy, and when the horse brings the puppy back, suddenly there's a girl, and it's pure love. And it all happens because we're drinking this beer.
You mean that's not true?
No, this does not actually happen when we drink beer.
It's incredible too. I know cigarette advertising is way down because laws have cracked down on that stuff. But even take a ride over to Las Vegas and just take a look at the billboards.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful women and great looking guys,
right.
And they're living the life and they're partying and that's the life, man. There couldn't be any fine print to that, right? Which is crazy because when I do walk into those sorts of places, that's not at all what I see.
Right, exactly. The media can be very deceiving.
Yeah.
They're there to sell us something.
Sure. There's
That's
an image
why
there.
they're there.
Of course.
And
There's a lot of money changing hands.
Absolutely.
Over that, right?
And so one of the things that I discuss with my 14-year-old when we see this type of media is, and I will just tell him honestly, with our history, we don't break out in gold and diamonds. We break out in handcuffs, and it's better to not do it.
And how does your 14-year-old respond to that?
He laughs at me.
Yeah.
My son is a good boy. He is a little bit advanced for his age. When you look at him, he doesn't look 14. He's got the goatee. He's 6'1", very handsome young man. And of course, in Lake Havasu City, with our culture being what it is, it's very difficult to tell a young man like him that, going down to the channel over spring break is probably not the healthiest thing to do.
I see.
Because he sees college girls with next to nothing on, and it's a
no
party.
one wants to see that,
right? And how do you tell a young man this?
Right.
It's very difficult. And so I've had that speech over and over. So we have the speech now.
So it's just early and often.
And often. Talk as early as you can, as often as you can. If you have used in the past, don't be afraid to tell them.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to talk about it.
Now, I suspect that some people would say, well, but if I do that, isn't that giving him permission? Isn't that saying, well, my mom did, so it's...
Absolutely not. Absolutely not, because along with that, you're going to share the consequences of those choices and those behaviors.
Right.
We can, and like I just said, we share the consequences of handcuffs. That mom doesn't drink, because when I drink, I have a tendency to get a little bit rowdy. And the only good thing that comes out of it is I get to pay lots of fines, and so I don't do that. Right. And try to encourage him to, model those behaviors.
And you're just saying, hey, I've learned these lessons for you if you're willing to listen
exactly.
to them. Right.
Does it mean they're always going to listen? How many teenagers listen to everything that we say? But at least we can give them the information. We can give them we can arm them with information, so that they understand when we partake in these behaviors that it changes their brains. As an adolescent, there is a chemical change in their brain when they start abusing any kind of substance, anything. So it's very important that they understand that it's going to cause a chemical change and that things are going to be different.
So we're talking, I don't know, we're talking about drugs in general, but I want to ask you about marijuana, because there's really been a shift in this country about marijuana in popular opinion and also in law. It's legal or decriminalized in several states now. I think the culture or the cultural perspective of marijuana has really changed over the years. What are your professional...
Professionally, it will always be illegal for a minor to use marijuana. Always.
Right.
It's not going to ever be legal for them to do. And so, me as a professional, I have to arm our youth again with information and help them to understand that when they're smoking marijuana, that it is going to cause that chemical change in their brain. It is going to lower their IQ, and it can be addictive. Those are all things that are very, very important for our kids to know. And it's kind of like alcohol. Once a youth is 21 or older, they're going to make their own choices anyway. And realistically, the science is now telling us that it should be by the age of 25, because that's when your brain really stops that push of development, not until you're 25.
Okay.
So, if I could encourage anything, is to not participate in any of these behaviors, at least until you're 21.
Yeah. How does your 14-year-old take to that conversation? It's okay if you don't want to talk about that. You brought him up, so
I know. And you know what?
Maybe we should have him on.
That wouldn't, well...
We don't know what might happen.
We don't know what, that's just it. You never know what's going to come out of one of their mouths.
That's the fun of it, actually.
Because he can give you all the scientific data.
Right. So it's getting through.
It's getting through to him. He can tell you that, and this is... that it will lower your sperm count. These are conversations that we've had because he is almost an adult.
Right.
And so we have these conversations. We talk openly and we talk honestly. Does that mean that I'm always going to get the answers I want to hear?
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
But we do have these conversations so that I know that my son is not going to be one that says, well, gee, my mom never talked to me about this.
Right.
Not happening.
I think it's cool. I'm kind of having some fun with you on this, but I think it's really cool that you bring him up because, it demonstrates you're engaged in this struggle professionally and personally.
Yes.
It's going on at home, and you're dealing with just what we're all dealing with, trying to raise a kid to be a good man and not,
right, and not a felon.
Not a felon. Let's come back to felonies in a bit. You offer some tips for communicating with kids. Express the risks. I think we've covered that pretty well. And just make it clear. Say you strongly disapprove.
Yeah, you have to set your boundaries, and you have to make sure that your youth understand your boundaries, that it will not be tolerated in your home by them. You have to help them to understand not only the risks and everything that's involved and why it's such a bad idea, but that it's unacceptable. And that's one boundary that can't be crossed, and then have the ability to follow through. And one of the things that was really important in the film on the prescription drugs that is approached is having the ability to call the police on your child if you need to.
Okay, so we return to the felony thing, conceivably. You set some boundaries. Let's just say one sets some boundaries. This is not going to happen. I am aware that this is happening with some of your peers. This is not going to happen in our house. But then you find pills, or one finds pills. Okay, so now it's like we have to see, were we bluffing or what?
And I don't think that at that point that it's a matter of bluffing. It's a matter of saving our child's life.
Yeah.
I would run into a burning building for my child. I will sure call the police to save my child's life, even if it means saving them from themselves. Because as a youth, they're going to age out of that system. And it's better for them to learn then than for me to find my son dead, which is what's happening.
Do you know of people who have had to call and have gotten good results, like in the long term?
Yes, I do. And I would say that the one young woman, and she is a young woman now, and she was an adult at the time that her mother called, and she went to jail, and she had to follow through with probation, but she also found a program of recovery. And today is living a clean and sober life.
How did her, without getting too far into her story, was she okay with her mom after that? Did she get it? Did she understand the big picture?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's very close to her mom now. Yeah. Because I think that once that substance is removed, then that clarity of mind can come back.
Yeah.
When a person is in active addiction and they're wrapped up in the disease of more, because that's what it comes down to, is more. That once they're wrapped up in that, they're not going to see anything clearly until that substance is gone from their body completely.
Let's talk a little bit about the warning signs of drug abuse.
Okay, so we're going to look at fatigue, red or glazed eyes, repeated health complaints. So in other words, if they're continually telling you about some sort of a pain that they're having, it's something you might want to really look into closely. Sudden mood changes. I know that for a lot of people, they think, well, this is a hormonal thing because of the age.
That's what I was thinking when you were saying it.
And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't.
Staying up all night and
right,
exactly. You're geeking out on a video game or something like that.
Exactly. So the pinpoints in their eyes. Look for pinpointed
like pupils that are just down to little
Absolutely.
dots.
Look
right?
for that. If they're depressed, if they're in some of the more intense scenarios, low blood pressure, decreased breathing rate, confusion, sweating, constricted pupils, those are all signs of opiate abuse. Okay, as far as depressant abuse, you're going to look at drowsiness, confusion, poor judgment, dizziness, slurred speech, respiratory depression. Their breathing is significantly slowed. And here's the really scary part about this. When you mix an opiate pain reliever with a benzodiazepine, in other words, something that you might take for anxiety. You mix those two together, and it becomes extremely dangerous. But then when you add your alcohol on top of it, it becomes deadly.
Patty, there's a lot of great information here, and I thank you for joining me. If people want to get in touch with you, I should say you do presentations often. You travel a lot. You give a lot of different talks, right?
Yes, I do, and I can do the RX360 presentation. If you have a youth group, a parent group, a faith group, it doesn't matter. As long as they're middle school aged through high school, I can come and present to them. I can present to adults in any kind of group setting. I travel a lot and am more than willing to come and do the presentation to educate you. That's what I do. I love to present this material because it's very important. It's a matter of saving our youth lives.
The best way to get in touch with you would be to call you at the Arizona Youth Partnership. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's 928-453-5800, and you're at extension 230.
Yes.
So again, that's 928-453-5800, extension 230. That's Patricia Jacques from the Arizona Youth Partnership. Patty, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me again. I appreciate the time. We're trying to fight a good battle here. We need all the help we can get.
And that is the show. That is Focus on Your Health. I'm TG LaFredo. If you'd like to reach me, you can send me an email at foyhradio@gmail.com. That's Focus on Your Health. foyhradio@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week.